decided to start another channel. That's not technically true. This channel already exists, and it was for my writing. But I've decided I want to make it another ASMR channel where I read my stories because I would like to share them with you. So I thought I'd start today with a really one that's close to my heart. It's a young adult one. It's called Lady of Londinium. But before I tell you about it, I just want to tell you who I write under as my pen names. And the first one is Arabella Kingsley, which I do most of my big romance under. I've had some best-selling novels on Amazon through her, and I've been doing that since about 2011. And now I'm writing under the name Asta Steele as well. I wanted a steampunk feel for the young adult book there. And sorry, I've got a bottle under my back, it's hurting. So, and I've also written under Cordelia Gregory, sort of thriller romances under Cordelia Gregory, and sci-fi romances under Serena Douglas. And I'm currently published by Blush and Books Publishing, and I have been with numerous others as well. I also self-publish, and I just thought I'd like to share these stories with you and do it sort of ASMR style, something that you could listen to just have a rest to or go to sleep to. I'm actually already burning some lavender over there to help you relax, but I'm going to do a little setup of candles and everything else before we get started as well, because like all of my channels, this is a little bit of healing, spiritual healing. If you want more healing, Reiki healing, angelic videos, go to my main channel, which is Angelic ASMR. I also have sort of like little tarot readings with the Palladian Tarot Lady channel, and I'm also doing a vlog of my own journey at the moment with all sorts of things since my divorce and weight loss journey and all sorts of things that have been going on in my life, which is hopefully going to inspire other people to go on their own journey. So I thought we'd start by reading Lady of Londinium. I don't know if I said that already. I've tried to stop this video about 3 times. Various noises outside stop me, so I want to make this as relaxing as possible. Obviously this is not gonna, the whole story is not going to be done in the first video because it's about 50,000 words, so but we'll get started, and if you enjoy it let me know and I'll do a part 2 and so on. So this story is about a girl who's about 17 who travels from 1987 into the future and finds that the world is very different. And I'm not going to tell you any more than that, but it's a little bit of paranormal as well, because I love all that stuff. So it's a case of keep watching to find out. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, please do so. And you might want to check out my other channels as well, subscribe to them if you're so inclined. But I'd love you to follow me on this one, follow the stories. They're going to be poems, all sorts of things. So and I'm hoping at some point it will turn a bit cinematic and I'll be able to do things with that. I would love to collaborate with somebody who where I could write the script for them. They could read out a little story about one of my characters or my books or anything like that. So if you would be interested in that, please contact me, send me a message. I'll put my email in the description as well. But let's get started, okay? Like, share, comment as well, please, if you enjoy it. And if you want to check out the book that you can download from Amazon and Kindle Unlimited, I'll put the link to the description in the description as well. And this book is one of, put it this way, there's a lot of time travel involved, and it's being connected to a whole string of other books that you might be interested in. But relaxed and in a nice healing, mindful space. Okay, so I think we should start with our little candle first, like I do on Angelic ASMR. Get our little star holder, because the stars are involved in this story, so it's very I write all my stories, as you'll know from my other channels. I have my guides right on cue. The picture that taps, ghostly tapping from my guides here, Spirit, and I co-create and write my stories with Spirit, and I'll explain more about that at some point, but you may hear taps on this painting here, which you can't see, but they're involved, so if you're wondering what's going on, that's them. Okay, so let's start off with a little candle. Right, I did think about using this one. It's already been used a little bit, but it's sandalwood, and I love sandalwood. So I've just sent for some more. It's not going to like that, but I'm going to put a little bit of lavender essential oil just to put you in a relaxed state and help you sleep. This is not going to be like the healing videos, but hopefully I can't do anything about the other noises, I'm afraid, sorry. So just block them out. I'm going to help you block them out. Okay. Oh. So I've got our candle going to help you relax. Then I thought we'd actually get some incense going as well. I'm going to read from my computer here. And I love this little romance rose, so I might try and light that again. Sometimes it doesn't light, but I thought we'd do one of these. It's to relax us. This is rose incense. I'm going to put it in my little holder, because when I tried to put in my main, I forgot what you call them, you know, like burn incense, it didn't work and burnt me the other day, so I'm not going to do that again. I was like to burn some incense. Healing symbols to get it going. You should not require protection to listen to this story, so, or grounding. In fact, I want your imagination to go wild with it. My guides actually came dressed up as the characters, so it's quite interesting. To help me, they often do that. And there's a little bit of influence from Archangel Michael, who they wanted me to tell you that. I don't know why. We'll do one more. It's see if this rose will light as well. Sometimes it goes out, but that's for a little bit of romance, love in the air. Okay, bit of romance for you. Okay, so as I say, I'm going to read it off my computer. Okay, oh great, so just really interesting. That's just an email to tell me somebody else has just subscribed to one of my channels, so if you haven't already, please do so. Just going to move those a little bit over there. Right, so the series is called Dead Sun, and for reasons which will become clear eventually, and it's in the set in 1987 and in the future. Okay, so chapter 1, Hertfordshire, April 1987. I sat up in bed screaming in the middle of the night. This happens most nights, and there is usually a solid reason for it. I never scream as a rule, not even at a Duran Duran concert. Not my style. Sorry, they're tapping my phone. So this is a pretty weird thing for me to do. It isn't like I am in control of it or anything. I am asleep and I just wake up doing it. Embarrassing, really. I'm not afraid. I've learned to recognise it as a kind of early warning system, a bit like the 4-minute warning. I am usually having a dream about someone coming into my room to attack me or something. I wish I dreamt about Simon Le Bon or John Taylor from Duran Duran coming in instead, but I never have any luck there. I never see who it is. It's like they are invisible, but I can really feel they are there even though I am asleep. They stand next to me and then they touch me. It makes my skin crawl. I can't move, my heart pounds, and then I sit up, eyes wide awake, and scream. Sometimes I see lights around me of all different colours, dots of red, blue and white. I've only seen black lights during the day. I don't like them for some reason. But in the last few years, I have seen faces, shadows and even full-on people standing in my room and around me outside when I'm awake. I try to ignore them, but then they get in my face and it's hard not to see them. Suppose I'm getting used to them now. Not sure I have a choice. Since I've turned 17 and started doing my A-levels, it isn't just lights, faces, shadows and people I see, but strange creatures. Everyone thinks I'm a weirdo because I made a mistake telling them what I saw once. I'll never do that again. No one comes near me now. I am just a joke at school. I hate that place. Wish Mum and Dad had sent me to an ordinary school and not a posh private one. I don't seem to fit in there or anywhere. All sounds crazy, I know. I don't know why I see them, I just do. I have been seeing strange stuff since about 6. Yeah, and I also feel everything. If you feel crap or scared and don't even tell me, I will know. I just will. There was something different about that night. I expected Mum to come running in like she always did, but nothing. She was still in the studio at the bottom of the grounds of the house, taking her frustration out on a new painting. She's Lucinda Driscoll, famous for her impressionist paintings. Her stuff is usually full of people acting like happy clappers and Captain Sensible at weddings and places. Too unreal for my tastes. It's like she doesn't want to see the world for what it really is with all its lies and illusions. But lately she has been dabbling in the dark side. She's been painting men that look like criminals. All harsh lines and black backgrounds. It's kind of cool. She says she wants to show the cruelty of men and the secrets they hide. I think she is trying to exorcise her anger at my dad. He's the film star James Driscoll. You know, the one who starred in Man's World with Stacey Wilde. He's going for the Oscar flick now. He left after a row the same night. Mum found him in bed with his new co-star in a hotel earlier in the day. Apparently she's a right bimbo. Dad usually goes for them. He breezed out past me, slamming the door just before the paintbrushes Mum threw at him in the kitchen reached him. He left for LA on the first plane out, and I haven't heard anything from him since. It's the third indiscretion, that's what Mum likes to call them. Beats me why she bothers with him. He's my dad, and I might love him, but he's still a pig. Guess she still had her Walkman on full blast that night. When I checked on her an hour ago, before going to bed, she was on her second bottle of wine, painting like a mad woman, splashing paint everywhere. The guy emerging on the canvas looked more like a demon version of my dad. Not sure it's going to be her best work, but hey, if it does the job and makes her feel better, who am I to judge? I pinned my body back against the headboard when a flash of white light filled the room, making me gulp. Streaks of light from the moonlight coming in between the blinds on my windows overlooking the garden was shimmering at the bottom of the room. I kept my dressing table, drawers and hi-fi stacked there. This weird shimmering grew, making my Duran Duran, a horse, Spandau Ballet and Richard Gere and American Gigolo posters look funny behind it. A mixture of adrenaline and acute anxiety spiked. Last week, forgive me. I lost my place there. I am an anxious person, but this is really strong. I hadn't felt this kind of anxiety since last week, and I never wanted to feel it again. Craig Knight and a couple of his friends cornered me in the small, closed-off courtyard at the back of the school where I always like to draw. No one else goes there, and I can escape in my mind. They did it for a dare. They wanted to see what it would be like for the most popular twat in the school to snog the weirdo. He grabbed hold of me and pushed me against the wall, while the rest of them laughed and urged him on. He was so strong I couldn't get away. He slobbered all over me as I squealed. Then they urged him to go further. He laughed and obliged. Next thing I knew, I was on the ground underneath him, and he was straddling my body with his hand up my school uniform skirt. More boys and a couple of girls came to watch. Bitches. They always had it in for me. They all stood looking down at me laughing. So humiliating. I wanted to scream, but like I said, not my style. So I fought like a tiger. Little good it did me, but at last I tried. I wasn't going out with a fight and letting him win. This blue light suddenly shot out of me from my chest and stomach. Next thing I knew, Craig was being lifted up by it and thrown across the courtyard to land against the opposite wall. Wow, I couldn't believe it. I stood up and everyone took a step back from me. They all looked terrified of me. I was shaking like a leaf, confused. Craig was getting up after sliding down the wall, swearing at me. He came towards me at speed, and it happened again. Some of the girls screamed and ran past Mr. Charles, one of the teachers who came to see what the hell was going on. He stopped the rest of us from leaving. No one mentioned the blue light when we were questioned by the police on my mum's insistence. Craig and the two boys, Mark and Tyrone, were all instantly expelled and facing charges. I just wanted to crawl out of there and never face anyone again. I didn't know where this blue light had come from, just that it had come from me. My mum and dad haven't let me return to school yet. Craig and the other two have disappeared, running away, vowing to get me back. Now there is a bloody police car outside the gates keeping guard. I wish this had never happened. I wish I wasn't this person. Maybe then everyone would like me more. It's so cold being lonely. So back in my room, my heart was thudding so much I thought it might burst. I knew something was taking form at the bottom of my bed. The distorted light started forming into distinct transparent shapes. It's two distinct transparent shapes. They started to move towards the bed. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. It felt like I was paralyzed. I couldn't even open my mouth. As they did, the transparency warmed and they took full physical form. There were green like lizards, but human, flat heads with long noses, bulbous black eyes on the side, scales all over their bodies with long yellow talons on their hands and feet. Hideous things, but that's not the worst of it. Long pink forked tongues came out of their mouths every time they hissed and spoke in some weird language. The sound of it made me feel sick. Their tall shapes kept leaning over me and having a conversation. I wanted to shout to Mum, but I knew she wouldn't hear me. These tunic-clothed things were armed as well with some kind of weapon, like something I've seen on TV before. I think they call it a bow. That guy in that TV series Monkey has one. I loved that show when I was a younger kid. I kept trying to work out what they were going to do. They just kept talking and prodding me. One of them did it so hard I yelped. It was good really because it made me move. I had to get the hell out of there before they decided to go further, or worse. Big mistake. The minute I moved, one of the things caught hold of my hair and pulled me off the bed. I landed on my carpet hard. Before I could move again, that horrible tongue poked out and lashed wetly against my neck. I really couldn't move after that, or even speak. At the same time, an image flashed vividly in my mind. It was of a tall man. He couldn't have been that much older than myself. Maybe a few years, 20 or 21. I couldn't say much of him because he was dressed in a long black coat with a hood. It looked more like a cape. I saw him walking across the road to the gate as though I was there. He had the most gorgeous ice blue eyes I've ever seen. He walked across the road, past the police car, undetected. The gates just seemed to open for him. He walked straight up to the front door and raised his hand to open it. Open sesame again. As he stepped inside the hallway and mounted the stairs to the first floor where my bedroom was, I finally got to see his face. Wow, he was so handsome. I've never seen a boy or a man that good looking before. The only real way to describe him is as beautiful. His pale skin had no imperfections. His features were aristocratic, regal, finely chiseled as though by a sculptor. He was so damn hot with muscles and all. I could see strands of blonde hair. He was so much more attractive than Val Kilmer, one of my favourite stars. I met him once when Dad took me to a shoot in Hollywood. I didn't just see his long booted legs mount the stairs. I felt every move he made as though he was somehow connected to me, part of me. I couldn't explain it. You have to remember at this point, I didn't know whether he was another intruder meaning to harm me or someone to help. But somehow I felt relieved he was finally here, as if I knew him. Then I remembered I'd seen him before in my dreams. God, I didn't know if I'd imagined him. I got distracted after that because the reptiles had obviously come to a decision about what to do with me. Out of the top of their weapons, a long blade suddenly appeared. And there was a third one. The one in the middle immediately lowered the knife to my throat and spoke again to the others. I felt its powerful warrior-like presence sweep through the doorway lit by the moonlight before I actually saw it. So he was real. He really was here. The reptiles hadn't sensed it yet, and the middle one made some intelligible announcement before raising the knife to swipe it across my throat. Inside I cried out. I was going to die. Then he spoke in their language, fluently. No hesitation, making the one ready to take my throat out stop dead in his tracks. They turned, except the one in the middle who answered him and raised the knife again. The man swept back his cape-coat to reveal a long sword sheathed at his side in a sling around his lean, athletic figure. He drew it quickly and moved across the room so fast he disappeared. He didn't reappear until I saw his sword clash with the bow underneath, so hard it raised the blade to the ceiling and up out of the reptilian's hands. I stared as the lizard man rushed forward to tackle my gorgeous rescuer. He made short work of dispatching the creature with his sword, slicing it clean through its middle. He spun around fast. In the process, his hood fell back over his shoulders, allowing the most beautiful silky ash blonde hair spill down over his shoulders to past his chest. Wow, it was nearly white blonde and seemed to glow. I couldn't take my eyes off it. The blade clipped through the reptile again, and he fell dead at the man's feet, dropping his bow. The second and third were already coming at him. He propelled the lizard towards the air and against the wall with his hand, discharging a charge of blue light just like the one I had seen coming from my body when Craig tried to rape me for fun. The man lowered his body and turned swiftly to kick the lizard's legs out with an expertly aimed kick. It was brilliant to watch. Impressively, it sent the slimy reptile into the opposite wall, ripping my Richard Gere poster. Shame, but it was cool. The creature slid down the wall and sank down hard on top of the hi-fi stack and squashed it flat. The stranger moved at lightning speed. He gripped the third reptilian by the throat to raise him into the air and then backwards with a thud on the floor, at the same time sending another fierce charge of light at the reptile he had originally thrown, who came towards him again. The creature fell backwards on the floor. This time the light consumed his body, sweeping up and down his form, burning and disintegrating it. The reptile's scream was loud, piercing, making me wish I was able to cover my ears. It made my blood curdle. Why the hell was Mum not hearing this? Then I had that weird feeling I sometimes get when I see supernatural stuff. Maybe this wasn't real, just a dream. I couldn't tell for a moment. It just seemed too incredible to be happening. One of the reptiles came at the man hard and knocked the sword from his hand. My rescuer snatched one of the lizard men's bows as the other two came at him. Turning his body, he twisted the bow fast in his hands with expertise before bending to avoid the attack of one, to hit it hard into the stomach of the other. At the same time, the reptile gave a loud cry. Blue light travelled down the bow and consumed his body. This time he fell dead. Every move the blonde young man made was precise, expert. He immediately raised his body and struck the bow across the head of the final reptile. It staggered back, dazed, holding the man's sword. The stranger dropped the bow and snatched his sword away from the lizard. He quickly lifted the weapon and brought it down across the reptile's neck, removing his head from his shoulders as though he was slicing butter. I scrunched my eyes closed, expecting to be covered in blood and not wanting to see. Thank God I didn't feel anything splash on my face. That made me open my eyes. I stared shocked when I saw that the first reptile to die had already disappeared. There was no trace of him. The man stood regally over the second two bodies, watching as they sunk inwards and disintegrated into ash. Before dissolving, I tried to move again, but it was useless. I felt my heart beat fast again when the man slowly turned his head to look at me with an imperious expression. He strode towards me, making me whimper as I attempted to move my body again. He lowered himself onto his haunches and swept his eyes over my body clothed in my silk PJs. "You are younger than I expected," he said, tilting his head to one side, as if he was confused or something. I didn't know him, and he shouldn't know me. His voice was kind of sexy, aloof, like English like my own, Victorian, but as if he belonged to the Victorian era. I got that wrong, sorry. I would have asked him what he was talking about, but I couldn't speak again. Then he enigmatically outstretched his arms to either side, lifting his cloak majestically as he did so, taking my breath away. He slipped his arms underneath me and lifted me up onto the bed. I didn't know where to look. I know I was blushing because my cheeks were warm. The paralysis will wear off soon. It is how the reptilian race stun their prey before an attack. "You must sleep," he said. He pulled the covers over me and tucked them around me. His face was so close to mine for a minute, I thought he was going to kiss me. When he leaned closer and studied my face, he said ever so softly, "You are very beautiful, more than I expected. Come to me, Clara, it is time. I have waited patiently for you a long time, but now the wait must end." Okay, it's going to go further down. He leaned forward, even more close. I looked up into those blue eyes. The colour was so vivid against his pale, smooth, perfect skin, and I felt transfixed. "What? You are my mate, Clara, and you must come to me." What did he mean by mate? Not that I wasn't interested or anything, but the way he spoke, it sounded like he considered me as his, like it was fate. Then it happened. He did it. Kissed me on top of my forehead. His lips were cool, soft as velvet, possessive as they lingered. He straightened and backed away from me and turned as though to move through an invisible door in the fabric of reality, and just disappeared, leaving me unable to get the image of the moment out of my mind. I could still feel the brush of his lips as if he was still there. Why did he have to leave just like that? A couple of minutes later, I felt the feeling in my body return. I sat up panting, wondering whether it had all been some strange dream again and had not really happened. I put the lamp on at the side of the bed. I hadn't dreamt anything. It was all true. The room was a mess. There was green slime up two of the walls, and my Richard Gere poster was torn in two, and my hi-fi stack was done for. I threw the covers off and retrieved my art folder from under the bed. I didn't want my mum seeing all of my artwork. These drawings were of my dreams, my visions, and the characters I wanted them to be private. I suppose I just didn't want to share them. They were special to me. I flung it open on the bed. I had at least 20 drawings of characters and worlds I had seen for the last 3 years in my visions. There were at least 10 of the young man who had saved me from the lizard men. I'd gotten everything down to the last detail correct, and even captured his beautiful pale face and blue eyes. I picked up another drawing of a bleak, dark winter landscape, an apocalyptic vision of London in the future after the bomb was dropped and World War III had occurred. Somehow I knew the two men were linked, and that it wouldn't be the last time I saw the blonde man. I'll carry on a little bit further into chapter 2. I don't want to go on too much longer though. Chapter 2, 5 days later. Finally, at long last and not before time, Mum decided she couldn't take any more of hanging around my father. A couple of days after the visit from my blonde knight in shining armour, she'd received a call from a friend in LA. Apparently my dad was on full form being the star of the show at a drug-induced orgy party. The headlines in the papers around the world and on the news the next day after his subsequent brush with the law because of drugs was the final straw. I wasn't surprised. I'd been waiting for him to do something else more stupid. Mum was loyal and a stubborn Taurus, but I had every confidence she'd see sense eventually and leave him. That day had now come, and I was relieved she wasn't going to allow herself to be hurt by him anymore. He was always an absent father, and I wouldn't miss him much. Now she was moving us to the northwest of the country, to the Lake District, for a new start, refusing to listen to any more of his false promises he'd made on the phone to sort himself out in rehab and to remain faithful and end his womanizing. I think he was terrified of not having her around, even though he was unfaithful. Mum was some kind of anchor in life for him. Too bad. Of course, it also sorted out my trouble. I wouldn't have to go back to that crappy school and face the taunts and rumours again. Many of the girls were on Craig's side, despite what he had done, and blamed me entirely for the incident. I had led him on. Mum was leaving most of the trappings of her life with the great, handsome, obsessed, over-arrogant superstar James Driscoll back in Hertfordshire for a new one in the northwest. Now he was suddenly driving up the motorway in Dad's Ferrari she had taken from him in spite as a consolation prize. We trailed behind the removal lorry to a property she had bought outright. Mum was determined and I was proud of her, but every now and then tears streamed down her face as she drove, and she sniffed. I couldn't help feeling her pain mingling with my own, and I made a vow never to get married as young as 19 like Mum. She'd really loved Dad. She'd put up with every taunt, controlling behaviour and affair, hoping one day it would get better. Not sure I could ever do that. What's the point in that? As for me, I rarely saw much of Dad now he was more famous. Strangers saw more of him when he was on the screen or being interviewed. Despite needing her as an anchor, I always got the impression Dad thought Mum was a drag on his wild life, and I know he was jealous of the doting love she gave me. He always said I was strange, an anomaly, and I don't think he could work out why she lavished so much love on me, and not on him like everyone else did. I don't care. Like I said, he's a pig. Oh, whoops. took one of my hands away from Morris, our cuddly Scottish Highland White Terrier I was holding on my lap, and closed it over Mum's, resting on the steering wheel. "We can do this." She smiled through her tears. "I know we can, Mum. I have no doubts. I have bought a beautiful house right on the side of the lake. I fell in love with it when I was a child, and I have already enrolled you in Ravenshead Collegiate. It is one of the best private schools in the country. I think you are going to like it there." She gave a sigh. "It has to be better than that dump your father insisted you went back to in Blair Heights. I will never forgive them for what they all did to you." I gave her a faint smile, feeling her anxiety tense her body. I so wish I wasn't an empath. I smiled back, hoping she was right, unsure if I could take much more. "I holidayed near Ravenshead when I was a child," she said. "You are going to love it. I always felt at peace there." "Is that what you are looking for now?" I had to ask. Mum nodded, wiping fresh tears away from her face. I held her hand again, trying to give her some support. This was the bravest thing she had done for herself in a long time. "I'm sure I will," she replied, making the effort to sound confident. The countryside stretched for miles in a continuous stream of green, littered with sheep. After a few hours, the mountains came into view, and the roads were narrower, with low stone walls on either side. The world we'd once known was disappearing into the distance as the car was swallowed up by the mountains and the valley we travelled through. Got to say, it was a comfortable feeling. "Look, there's Skiddaw Mountain," Mum said excitedly. "I climbed to the top when I was just 10 with my father." She sniffed back some more tears. "I wish you could have known him and your grandmother." Mum slapped her hand against the steering wheel. "Damn it, I really could have done with their advice and support." "You have me and you have Morris, Mum. You don't need anyone else." I tried to sound upbeat and with humour. "We will look after you," she grinned. "We will look after each other." She pointed at a road sign. "Keswick, that is where we used to stay, in a caravan on a site right on Derwentwater Lake. Ravenshead is not far from it, just on the opposite side of the lake. We are nearly there. I'm starving. We can get fish and chips." It was evening and the summer sun was lowering in the sky behind the mountains when we reached the large old lake house. The 18th century building, aptly named Honeypot House, was so much more beautiful than I had imagined and Mum remembered. Situated at the bottom of two mountains sloping towards the lake, it was covered in ivy. There was a huge garden leading down to the water for Morris to play in and Mum to paint, and I suppose me to draw. The air was so fresh and pure, unlike Blair Heights. I was going to like it here. I could feel it. We weren't completely out in the sticks, thankfully. The small village of Ravenshead we passed through on the way was only a mile and a bit down the road. It was quaint and old, but I had hopes it had some kind of life, some decent shops at least. After parking next to the removal lorry, we were preparing to carry bags and suitcases to the door when we were interrupted by someone shouting hello. We both turned in the direction of the voice to find a nice, tall-looking dark-haired man around my mum's age in a suit, with a boy my age in tight faded denims, white t-shirt and a short brown leather jacket. They both had piercing brown eyes that were so deep in their colour they could have been taken for black. They stared a little too long for my liking, as though they were both sizing me and Mum up. Mum was blushing and smiling, and I was frowning, wondering what their game was. I can't help it if I'm distrustful. Wouldn't you be? "Hello." The man held out his hand. "Hi, my name is Hale Grayson." He was American. "I live up at the manor house with my son Carter. We just wanted to welcome you to Ravenshead and wondered if we could give you some help moving in." Mum shook his hand. "That's very kind," she gushed, putting her hand to her chest. "I am Lucinda Driscoll, and this is my daughter Clara. It is lovely to meet you." "Yes, you are the famous painter. You have to forgive me. I heard it was you moving in, and I wanted to meet you. I am one of your biggest fans, and I possess 2 of your original paintings, The Pale Lady and The Dancer. I look forward to showing them to you." I frowned, and this time gained a grin from Carter. "Thank you, I would like that very much," Lucinda smiled, clearly flattered. "Now, how can we help?" Hale asked. Well, the movers seem to have everything in hand. We can at least carry your bags. Resistance appeared to be futile when Hale walked forward and took hold of the 2 heavy bags Mum was carrying. Carter followed his father's lead and tried to tug the heavy suitcase away from me. I held on tight. I can manage, thanks. I hadn't meant for it to sound so snooty, but I could look after myself. Suit yourself, he said, straightening, walking past me to pull the last bag from the car. He followed his dad and my mum, leaving me to stand there staring after him like an idiot. Narrowing my eyes, I struggled with the suitcase behind him. Mum and Hale were chatting away as they navigated a path around the movers, over the gravel and into the house, Morris trotting alongside after being made a fuss of by Hale. I struggled, wishing I hadn't allowed my female pride to have gotten in the way and hadn't been so bloody stubborn. I must have looked like a right prat. I had to make several stops just to get my breath and give my aching arms a breather. Mum had packed all of her art supplies in there and ornaments that she refused to allow the movers to deal with in case they met foul play. I flexed my hands to get rid of the pain and reached to pick the suitcase up again. It was a dark grey leather suitcase, battered to hell. She must have had it in the attic since the 70s. Mum was a hoarder, and I suppose I was a bit like her with all my books and old clothes. Shaking out my hands from the pain of carrying the heavy thing, I reached out for the handle of the dark grey leather suitcase again. But before I could pick it up, I've said that twice, I think, sorry. But before I could pick it up, Carter came out of nowhere and swept it up into his hands and walked away carrying it. Next time, don't be so stubborn, he called back to me. I growled under my breath and followed after him. The house was nearly as large as the one in Hertfordshire my mother had put on the market, unknown to my dad. Another proverbial kick in the teeth for him. But unlike this one, the atmosphere was happy, warm and welcoming. There had always been a coldness to my last home. I walked across the wooden floor and onto the large square Persian carpet. In the middle was a large mahogany circular table on which the estate agents had placed a huge arrangement of stargazer lilies, Mum's favourites to welcome us. But that wasn't the best feature of the entrance hall. At the back there were 2 staircases running parallel to each other, leading up to the first and second floor, housing 12 bedrooms, typical Lucinda Driscoll style. There were only 2 of them, and we could have made do with a much smaller house. But Mum loved to do things in style and would never settle for less than she had been used to, unless absolutely necessary. Do you want me to leave your bags here or take them somewhere else? Hale was questioning my mother, looking wistfully around. I haven't been in this old place for a few years, and it doesn't look any different. We stayed here when we first moved from the States after renting it from the owner. I think you'll be very happy here. Yes, I think we will. Don't worry about the bags. I'm sure the movers will help. This place has so many bedrooms. I'm not sure which to choose, she laughed. They continued their discussion, making me feel like a spare part when Carter came behind me after chatting to one of the movers. They seemed to be hitting it off like a house on fire, he grinned. I turned to look at him, a frown on my face once more. He stretched out his fingers and smoothed my brow. You shouldn't frown like that. It will put lines on your face, and that's a shame because it's a very pretty one. I took a step back, surprised. He lowered his hand. I don't bite, you know. Don't you ever talk? Yes, of course. I felt stupid again. I wasn't very good talking to boys, and it was worse since Craig. I didn't want to go anywhere near them. It wasn't just because I was forever wondering if they were laughing at me or ready to pounce. I wasn't that precious. I was even more worried about what would happen if one got close again. The electric blue light might appear, might hurt them. Then it hadn't hurt the stranger that night. But then he seemed to control the light, he yawned. What the hell was it anyway? Not sure I ever wanted to find out. It was better for Carter if he kept back just in case. I was more dangerous than he realised. Still, he didn't seem to be getting the message by my aloofness. He stood over me, hands in his tight jeans pockets. I hear you're going to Ravenshead Collegiate just like I do. How do you know that? Another grin. My father knows most things in the village and the Lake District as a whole. He's a loud noise round here, and you are taking the same A-levels as me. Well, 2 anyway, history and economics. You are also studying English literature and art of all things. He raised his voice in disbelief, as if art shouldn't have been a choice. Apparently you are something of a genius and an all-rounder at your last school. I don't want to talk about it, I snapped, climbing up, worrying he knew more than I liked. It was his turn to frown. What, you don't want to talk about winning the Johnson Prize for art? I lowered my eyes, wishing the ground would swallow me up. I was relieved, but I still didn't like talking about my prizes and stuff. It was embarrassing. I have to go. Thanks for your help with the bag. I started to move away, but he caught hold of my arm and held me still. I glared down at his hand and he sheepishly removed it. Hey, I'm sorry if I made you feel uncomfortable. I'm just impressed. I am smart, but wow, you are something else, he smiled. I'm not going to give up trying to make you talk, shy girl. How about I call in the morning around 8 a.m. and we can walk to school together? I was going to say no, but then I realised Mum was listening in and giving me one of those infuriating, embarrassing, encouraging looks she always gave me around boys. I couldn't face one of her well-meaning lectures later, so I smiled. Okay, I will see you in the morning. I'm looking forward to it. Good night. Good night. Hale said his goodbyes and left with Carter. That wasn't so hard, was it? Mum said when they were gone. Mum, I don't need friends. They only bring trouble. I thought we had already worked that out, I snapped, irritated. She shook her head. I'm not going to let you be lonely. This is going to be a different experience for you. She lovingly squeezed my face like she always used to when I was younger, and I tried to escape as usual, but there was none. Baby girl, I am going to help you trust again if it's the last thing I do. Carter seems like a nice young man. I like his dad. They are alone like us. Mrs. Grayson died in the States in LA a few years back. Mum, I think it's too soon for you two. She gave a small laugh and hugged me. He's very handsome, but don't worry, I'm not getting any ideas of a rebound relationship. Good, I don't want you to get hurt again. Don't worry about me, concentrate on yourself. Let's get settled in as much as we can and get some food. We better unpack your uniform and make sure it is crease-free. I want everything to be perfect and easy for you tomorrow. I did my best to hide my anxiety for tomorrow, going to a new school, and tried to put a positive spin on it all. Let the movers finish and drove to Keswick, to Mum's favourite fish and chip shop from when she was a kid, the old Keswick Inn. She drove the Ferrari, abandoning the rule of no food in the car Dad had enforced, to a quiet spot by the water's edge. We sat on a rug in front of the Ferrari by the water and ate them out of the newspaper they were wrapped in. I can't remember the last time I had fish and chips the old-fashioned way, Mum laughed. I'd forgotten how peaceful it is here. I can't wait to paint some landscapes again. I already have some new ideas. I want to go in a different direction and do a variety of new things. As soon as I get the house sorted out, I will start. I sighed. No way was she going to wait to paint. We would be living out of boxes and eating fish and chips forever. I knew it was up to me and the staff Mum had hired, who would be arriving tomorrow to get the place feeling like home. Come on, eat up. It is starting to get dark. I don't want to see any more of this not eating you have done for this year so far, her mother instructed. Relax, Clara. It is time for you to feel safe and happy. I didn't have much of an appetite. Eating the fish and chips was the first time I'd felt like eating properly for months. I was so anxious and on alert all the time. I felt sick every time I tried to eat. I looked out over the lake to the two small islands in the middle of the water and beyond to the mountains and the valley beneath them. There was something surreal and safe about being in the mountains. It was like being in another secret world that outsiders knew nothing about. Maybe things would get better here. I wondered what kind of world my midnight rescuer inhabited. Come on, we need to go. We need to get your bed and uniform sorted out. Have you chosen a bedroom yet? Mum asked, holding out her hand to take my rubbish from me. No, not yet. They're all pretty big, although I have only been in 5 of them so far. Mum giggled and put the rubbish in the bin provided for picnickers. I know, I have only been in 3. I thought we could invite loads of people to stay and have parties, she grinned. It isn't like we don't have the room. Christmases are going to be brilliant. I grinned and stood to fold the blanket up. You can have your friends stay whenever they want as well, she said. Mum, Oh, Mum, nothing, she warned, opening the door of the F40 Ferrari to throw the cashmere rug on the small back seat. There will be friends to come and stay. When you turn 18 at the end of February next year, we will throw a big party. Okay. Fancy driving back? He isn't here to warn you about taking his car. It belongs to me now. He's staying in LA. I stared at her in surprise. Her smile quickly faded. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I was going to later. Are you upset? She sounded nervous. I should have thought. No, I'm not. Should I be? I answered, feeling relieved on some level, ignoring the hurt that he couldn't be bothered to tell me himself. No, sweetie, you don't have to be if you feel that way. He should have told you. He hasn't even talked to you since he left. I think I make Dad uncomfortable. Mum laid her hand on my shoulder as if to soothe the confusion at my mixed feelings away. Your father has a lot of lessons to learn, baby girl. Carmen gets an address, and I think he is next on her list. She hugged me before moving towards the passenger side and throwing me the keys. Come on and drive me home. Sorry we had to leave your XR3i down south. I will get you a new one soon. I caught the keys and grinned. I'd only been allowed to drive the Ferrari once after I passed my test a month ago. The F40 was barely 2 months old and my dad had been precious over it. It was a dream to drive. One day I was going to own one of these cars. Fast cars were becoming a passion. By the way, I would like one of the rooms at the back overlooking the lake, if that's okay, I said, driving the Ferrari with a roar from the picnic spot. I knew you would. I'm going for the master bedroom at the back on the first floor. Why don't you have the master on the third floor? That's the second floor, sorry. You should have the whole floor to yourself so you can have your friends around to stay. She wouldn't stop shoving the friends thing in my face. I think you are being a bit too optimistic there, Mum. Nonsense. I know you will come home tomorrow having made at least 12 friends. What about Carter? You've already made one and we've barely been here 2 hours. Thankfully, she was distracted the rest of the way home. Look at that, Clara. Mum pointed out the rays of the moon across the water. Isn't it beautiful? I forgot what the moon looked like over the water. It will be a full moon tomorrow night. I might come out here and paint it. I will come with you. You will probably be out with your new friends. I bit my lip. This relentless optimism was wearing thin and was adding to the pressure. I didn't want to let her down, but let's face it, most people like to keep away from the freak. Maybe. I relented to placate her before changing the subject. So are you divorcing Dad or just staying separated from him? She was quiet for a moment. Divorce. I can't take any more. My lawyer has gone to LA in person to serve him with divorce papers on the grounds of persistent adultery. It is time for him to receive a shock. He thinks I'm going to come back and go and live with him, hold his hand while he sorts himself out. He won't win this time. It's up to him to make arrangements to come and see you. There is nothing to stop him. I won't. The question you should be asking is whether or not he will bother to. There was a hardness to her voice that made my eyebrows rise as if they had a life of their own. Clara, he hasn't bothered taking an active interest in your life since you were 12. Where was he when those boys hurt you? He came 3 days later, stayed a day and then ran off to the next film set. Bowed my head, feeling the emotional pain cut deep. No matter what that bastard does in the future, I will never desert you or let you down. I will always be there for you no matter what. Do you understand, Clara? You always have been. I will never doubt it. She grinned. Damn right. A few hours later, I lay in my double four-poster bed in the middle of the room, staring out of one of the two long Georgian windows, sans curtains, at the moon over the water, going over every possible scenario that could occur at school tomorrow. At least I wasn't going alone, even if it was a boy who was going with me. I briefly closed my eyes, hunkering down to hibernate underneath the cool sheets, hoping I would fall asleep quick. Even though I was pretty tired, it didn't come. I growled and opened my eyes and sat up to plump the single pillow under my head. I was just about to lie back down, but found myself sitting bolt upright. The Georgian windows had disappeared. The moonlight was no more, and the room on that side of the bed had vanished to be replaced with another location. It looked like some kind of bar in a cavern underground somewhere. It was dark, and it seemed as though it was from the past, yet there was something different about it that wouldn't fit so easily as being described as Victorian. There was a heavy industrial cold feel to it. The tables were round and metal with brown leather chairs. The dark room was dimly lit with lamps at intervals on the tables and on the walls around the nooks and crannies of the low-ceiling, cavernous room. Some were elegant, tapered out of bronze with round glass luminous balls of light resting on top. Most others bore tulip-shaped glass shades, and the walls were exposed brick. An effort had been made to showcase the establishment as a place of elegance by the gold-framed portraits on the wall. The floor was made of dark wood and creaked as the occupants walked across it. For a moment I wondered if I could be seen just like them, but no one reacted, so I guess I couldn't be. Everyone's clothes were a strange eclectic mix of fashions from Victorian, Gothic, and Dystopian, and in some cases even mythical worlds, as if no one could quite make their mind up what was in. Mid-length black Victorian dresses with short laced-up ankle boots for women, tailcoats for men, next to sweeping long wool hooded cloaks and coats and face masks, long hair of every colour on many of the handsome pale men, to those in Gothic clothing, creating a sombre, futuristic appearance. They were all beautiful and young. There appeared to be no one who would not stand out in a crowd. I wondered what dimension I was being allowed a glimpse into now. The land of the beautiful ones, I muttered to myself. There was a low hum of people talking around the tables in this strange bar as they were served drinks by waitresses with hair piled on their heads, wearing tight brown leather uniforms, the collars of which stretched up their necks and were decorated by small brass buttons. Something drew my eyes to a table in the corner of the main room past the long bar. A waitress came in carrying a tray of drinks, and then the reason for the invisible pull to that corner of the room emerged as she passed by. The handsome blonde man in the cloak who had saved me only 5 nights ago put down his tankard veil and looked directly at me with his haunting blue eyes. I warmed as he settled with interest on me and heard myself gasp. He was so beautiful, more than I remembered, but unlike the last time, there was something different. There was confusion on his face. He didn't seem to know who I was or why he was seeing me across the room in another dimension. He parted his lips to speak, but the whole scene shimmered and dimmed, disappearing as quickly as it had arrived, leaving me bemused. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. That's the end of chapter 2. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you come back for the next bit. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. Like, share, comment, and let me know what you think. And you can buy this book on Amazon and Kindle Unlimited. I'll put the link in the description. I hope you sleep well or rest well.